This is always the awkward part. Hello, everyone. There's a few people, and I wasn't sure how many people were going to be in here. So I'm going to wait a couple more minutes just because I know that there will be people kind of coming in at the last minute. But I should actually be able to see your questions. So if you guys have questions about anything during the class, you can actually type them out in the question section. They'll pop up and we'll be able to actually see them. So just a heads up, like if you have questions, the way that I usually do class is it's really, really chill. And if there are questions, interrupt me with them. If there are questions about anything that I've talked about or anything that even you're curious about, because I know that sometimes I may not cover exactly what you're curious about. So if you have questions about anything that we're doing at any point in time, toss those questions in there and I'll be able to see them. I hope I will. I should be able to. If you can actually see me and hear me, can somebody post a question or just let me know in the comments while we wait for people to come in? If this is your first Magic of the Month class, I apologize. I realize there's been a decent gap between the first or the last class and this class. But I'm getting back onto a regular schedule. So you'll probably, I don't know if you can hear this right now, but Gordon's actually in the litter box. It's like 5 feet away from me. So if you hear a scratching sound, it's definitely him. I don't know. Maybe I can't see your questions. This is going to be really awkward. It's just going to be me talking to myself the whole time. Let me see. Normally I can. Oh, I hear my phone buzzing. That means people are leaving comments. Let's see if I can see them on my phone. Let me refresh. Yeah, I see there's so many of you in there. There we go. I see them. Okay, awesome. I'm going to have to refresh, so I'm going to be like looking down screen every couple seconds. So I apologize. And I have my curriculum. As you all know, I like to make sure that I'm a bit of like a nerd when it comes to stuff like that. And I like to make sure that I am covering everything as much as I possibly can. So yay, I can see comments now. That makes me happy. Yes, Jennifer, any kind of questions that you have, please feel free to toss them right in there. I'll be able to see you. Yeah, anything that you're curious about, anything that you want to know more about, just toss your questions in there and I'll be able to see them. And we'll give everybody a couple more minutes. Maybe we'll have some more people coming in here last minute. Okay, good. This is always the fun part, is like the first 5 minutes of class, because it's just me making sure I'm doing everything correctly. Today we're going to talk about so we're going to start a series today, which I'm really excited about. It's a series that's going to cover the Wheel of the Year. So we'll talk a little bit about what the Wheel of the Year is, and then we're going to talk about the upcoming ritual, the upcoming Sabbath that is just a couple weeks away at this point in time. So we'll kind of go over just a surface kind of, level what the Wheel of the Year is. And then we're really going to kind of dig into this upcoming Sabbath so that you guys can actually practice it yourself if you want to. And then I thought it would be kind of fun because we can cover pretty much all of them. And instead of sort of doing like, a quick Passover, I'll really be able to like dedicate a decent chunk of the class to the actual upcoming Sabbath. So I even have a recipe for you guys, which I'm kind of excited about. So we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about, sorry, I'm just checking questions. We're also going to talk about retrogrades, because everybody's freaking out about retrogrades right now. And it's understandable. These ones are pretty gnarly and they're definitely messing with people big time. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what they mean and how you can make your way through them, how you can traverse them without wanting to absolutely pull your hair out. And there's the best way to kind of look at it is I'm going to tell you why they suck. And then I'm going to give you examples of how you can kind of maybe change the way that you think about a lot of them. And it'll change the way that, you know, you experience them. So we're going to get a little bit more out of it. And we're going to talk about sacred space. So I'm going to launch in now because I feel like we've given everybody enough time to get here. And always the class is archived. So if you are watching this now and you missed the first 5 minutes of me rambling, you can definitely go back and watch that if you really want to. But any of the classes are actually archived. You just have to scroll back and look for them. I wish that Patreon had a easier way to actually look at the archives, because it would be nice if they were all kind of clumped into like one spot. But unfortunately, they don't do that. You have to scroll all the way back. There's Gordon. He's mad because the door's closed. So Gordon, in our house, we call him Gordon the Warden, because he hates it when doors are closed. Like, he gets really mad. So he's literally out there right now meowing. So yeah, all of the archive classes, all you have to do is scroll back and find them. And from this point on, I'm probably going to aim for doing one a month. And then I have some other stuff that's being planned. If you follow me on Instagram, you've been seeing a lot of little videos that I've been sort of posting lately, and I've been kind of playing with video content and how to like create more video content that exists in this space. So there'll be some fun surprises coming really soon, and I think you guys will really like them. And I'm having a lot of fun making them. There's so much false information. I'm going to go on a salty rant now. I haven't even started. I'm going to go on a salty rant. So because witchcraft has become so popular within the past couple of years, and I mean, the thing is, witchcraft has always been very popular. It's always been something that people have had an interest in for obvious reasons. It's very exciting and fun. And, but for some reason, I think over the past couple of years, the aesthetic, that kind of like witchy aesthetic, has become really popular, which is great, because in a lot of ways, it's actually brought people to practicing magic where, you know, maybe initially they were really interested in the visuals of it. And then they came to realize like, oh, crystals aren't just pretty. I actually feel great when they're around, which is awesome. But in a lot of ways too, it's brought a lot of kind of misinformation, and there's a ton of it out there, and it can be really frustrating for someone who's practiced magic for a really long time, seeing people kind of give people information that isn't correct, and you know, kind of leading them maybe down paths, or in some cases I see people getting, you know, information that isn't correct, and then it just kind of turns them off from wanting to have anything to do with magic and witchcraft. So that it kind of, you know, sends them away from it, which is really awful. And that's the kind of worst case scenario. So one of the things, kind of, you know, just consuming witchy related content, which I do all the time, there is so much of it that's incorrect that I kind of want to have a better way to put my voice out there. And so that people can be learning from people that know what they're talking about, and not people who are kind of just making it up as they go. And there's a lot of those people. So you probably will see a lot more kind of video content. I'm not going to be doing like a YouTube channel or anything like that, because I'm way too old and I don't have the energy. But it's definitely going to be kind of centered around my Instagram account, and it's just it'll be fun and easy. And I'm also working on some things that just Magic of the Month Club people will be getting, which I'm kind of excited about. So I keep refreshing the comments. I'm sorry, guys. So yeah, look for that kind of in the coming months. And again, I'll be these classes will be much more regular at this point in time. So basically, we've given everyone 10 minutes. Let's start. So if you've taken other classes with me, I know that there's a lot of new people or people that have joined, and you know, over the past couple of months, I haven't been doing classes. So welcome, new people. Welcome to the class. This is what it is. It's me talking to you, sitting in front of, this is where a lot of the Magic of the Month stuff actually happens. Usually my computer isn't there. I just like having it kind of, I always have another computer in the background with like a image on it sometimes, because I think it like represents like what we're talking about in class, because I'm a big dork. So yeah, this is what it is. This is, it's me talking to you guys about magic, and letting, you know, if you guys have questions again about anything, feel free to toss them in the chat room or in the questions area. So what we're going to, and it's also me doing this a lot, looking down at my, my notes. So I never want to miss anything. So don't judge me. So basically we're gonna start talking about start class talking about sacred space. And in previous classes, we've done a lot of kind of visualizations and meditation techniques to have to experience an inner sacred space. And we've done, you know, I've kind of led people on a guided meditation that's gone throughout a few of the classes, and it's led them to this inner kind of sanctimonium, this wonderful place, this place of like peace and tranquility that they can go to, or that you can go to whenever you kind of feel stressed out. And I was thinking a lot about the idea of having that inner sacred space, but we also need to have an outer sacred space. We need to have a actual physical place. So I thought, since we had a bit of a break, we would come to class again, talking about sacred space again, but talking about sacred space in the physical reality. So having an actual physical place. So sacred space. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a small healing altar or a place for meditation and focus, either in your home or in your yard, in your garden, any one of those places. If you love being outside and that for you is a place that feels as if it would be the most sacred and you know, spiritually like you'd have such a good connection with that space, then by all means, we're going to create space in your yard. But for some of us, our homes are the places where we really just feel that. And so whatever works for you. So think of it as sacred space as a place where you can sit quietly at the very, very least for 5 minutes a day. So no matter what, this should be a space that no matter what you're doing, no matter what day of the week it is, no matter how much stress you have going on in your life, you can dedicate at least 5 minutes of your day to spending time in and around this place. So again, think of it as a sacred space where you can spend at least 5 minutes a day for reflection, for gratitude, to set your intentions, and to cultivate your inner life. And so I think a lot of us, when we kind of have like a spiritual call, we feel a spiritual calling or some kind of an awakening, whether it's to magic or to Wicca or to meditation or to whatever it is. I think a lot of people initially get very overwhelmed by that and they don't know how to start. And I know that you know, that has always been a thing for me. And it's always been something that people kind of ask me like, okay, I'm really interested in all this kind of stuff, but I just don't know where to start. And so we're going to create this sacred space as a way to give you a place, again, where at least for 5 minutes a day, you can begin to make that connection to your inner world. You can begin to make that connection to spirit, whatever that is for you, whether it's God, whether it's goddess and God, whether it's source, whether it's whatever it is, it's going to be a place for you to begin to make your connection to that space. And having a physical reminder of that, having a place in your home is almost, I think, really necessary in a lot of ways. A lot of people have altars. A lot of people have, you know, dedicated space for practicing magic. And then there are some people that just 100% don't. And for me personally, I have to have that. I have to have a space that feels like it's dedicated to that specifically. And I'm, you know, I think that it's also a nice way to kind of have something that reflects your inner world in your outward space. So again, that's what we're going to be doing this month, what we're going to be talking about. So when you first set to work on creating your sacred space or assembling your altar, whatever you want to call it, it helps to get clear on your intentions in the space. So for some of us, our intentions will be to practice magic. For some of us, our intentions might be for meditation. For some of us, it might be journaling. It might be drawing. It's whatever that is for you. However you feel you make that connection to that part of yourself. You want to kind of go into building this space with that intention. So if it is going to be for practicing magic, when you're finding the right spot, have that in your mind and visualize yourself practicing magic there. See yourself in those places, doing what it is that you want to be doing there. And that's really important, because what you're doing is right out of the gate, you're setting your intention in that space. You're making that space, you're imbuing it with that energy, with that feeling. And in a lot of ways, you're manifesting that space into reality. So One of the things I wrote that I think is really important is I said, decide what sacred means to you. This is really important. So again, the idea of sacred, what does that mean to you? Is that a way for you to connect with your ancestors? Is it a way for you to connect with the spirit world? Is it a way for you to connect with deities, or with God, or with source, or with, oh, here comes Gordon. He's just barging right in. He doesn't care. Hi, Gordy. Whatever that is, take a little time to really think about that and think about what that means to you. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be dedicating a spot in our home that will be our sacred space. It doesn't have to be the whole room. That's one of the things that I really wanted to mention, because I think that that can also be very overwhelming for a lot of people. When I say, like, we're going to have a part of our home dedicated to, a lot of people are like, yeah, but people come in my house and I want them seeing like an altar in the middle of my living room. And I totally understand that. So when I'm talking about a space, I'm talking about any space that you're comfortable with. It can literally be an entire room if that's what you're comfortable with, or it can be something the size of a desk that's in a bedroom. It can be a bookshelf. It can be a corner of your nightstand. It doesn't have to be anything that's huge, and it doesn't have to be anything that's massive and elaborate. It can be something that's really, really small, and something that just gives you a small space where you feel as if you can kind of connect. And so that was really important, because I know that for a lot of people, when they start hearing like sacred space and dedicated spots, they start thinking like, I don't really want to have something like that, like in a massive room dedicated to it. I'm talking about just any space that you can make kind of a connection with, and that you're in and around at least for 5 minutes out of your day. So one of the other things that you really want to do in order to create your sacred space is you want to have, and this is something that has always worked really well for me, you want to have some kind of daily ritual that you do. So for some people, it might be literally as simple as lighting a candle. And maybe it is on your right next to your bed, the table next to your bed. Maybe you light a candle and you sit for 5 minutes in meditation, or maybe you read a book that has to do with magic or witchcraft for 5 minutes. But while you're doing that, you have your candle going. You're doing something that creates that connection to that space. For some people, it might be tarot. Maybe for 5 minutes out of a day, it's you giving yourself a tarot reading. And that's how you make your connection. That's the ritual that you perform in that space. You can perform many different types of rituals, but I think for at least 5 minutes a day, we should be cultivating a connection to our spirit and to the space that we're dedicating to our spirit, because we love ourselves and we want to continue growing in that place. So we want to, have a physical representation of it where we can go, a place that feels truly like we're connecting to our inner selves. So create a ritual. It can be as simple as lighting a candle once a day to give yourself a moment to connect with the spirit. Or again, tarot. Maybe it's a cleansing. Maybe you're using Palo Santo or sage, something to cleanse yourself with. It doesn't matter what it is. It just should be something that's really important to you. It should be something that is meaningful to you and that connects you to that side of yourself. So it could even be burning herbs. It could be whatever it is for you. Maybe it's writing in your book of shadows, or it's dream journaling, or, making that kind of connection to ancestors or loved ones that have passed on. No matter what it is, it's something that you can physically do in that space. So again, create that ritual at least, once a day for 5 minutes. Think of it as a space just for you to honor your inner wise woman or your inner wise man, and to inspire your creativity, to help reframe your attitude towards parts of yourself, and to make that connection to spirit. So it's really important. We kind of want to go into it with as many good intentions as we possibly can, with the hope that we can create that connection for at least a short time during the day. And it doesn't just have to be 5 minutes. For some people, if you have more time and you want to be able to sit in your space for half an hour a day, absolutely. But 5 minutes, I think, is the minimum of how much time we should be kind of giving at least to that part of ourselves. So for me, again, like I said, lighting a fire is my way to create ritual space. So I light a fire, or at least a candle. It's a very common way to welcome in the sacred in many different cultures, and can quickly shift your mood and your attitude, especially if they're scented candles, or if you're creating some kind of an incense where you're burning incense. All of those smells are connecting us to our spiritual self, to our inner self, and to to spirit and to source. And that's really, for me personally, having fire in my spaces is really, it could be because I'm a Leo, maybe. But for whatever reason, that element has always felt like a very spiritual one for me. So that's where my kind of thought process with having some kind of a candle or fire. But think about that as an example. What would it be for you? Maybe it would be a bowl of water if you're a Pisces or a Scorpio. Maybe it's an incense where you can have, your connection to air, or maybe it's like your favorite crystals. That's your connection to earth. Whatever it is, it's completely up to you, and make it as personal as possible. Because again, this is your space. This is your connection. It's your connection to your spirit, not only your higher self, but whatever it is that you believe is the source. So again, burning incense crystals, personalize your space by including items that are important to your spiritual practice. So for some of us, it might be a pentacle. For others, it could be a cross. It could be the Star of David. It could be any kind of visual reminder, a visual connection that you want to put in that space. Maybe it's mala beads, or I don't know, anything at that point. It could be anything. Maybe even a picture of your grandma or your family or your favorite animal or your favorite place, whatever that is. Make that connection. One that is important to you, and then bring a physical representation of it into your sacred space. So are there any questions so far? I'm checking to see if there's any comments here. There's no comments so far. But basically what we're going to be doing is that's going to be your homework for this month. So usually I like to kind of give out a little bit of homework. And I think if you don't already have one, it's something that's really important to spiritual practice. It gives you actual physical space to kind of connect with it. And so if you don't have one, I would really love it if you would create one for yourself. Again, even if it's as small as, a tiny space on a bookshelf, or as big as an entire room, or a huge garden, or a small portion of your garden, whatever it is, that would be really beneficial for your spiritual practice, but also something that I think is really important. So your homework is to create a sacred space for yourself, a physical sacred space for yourself. And I thought it might be kind of fun if you already have a sacred space, or you love this idea and you're going to go out and start creating one right now. I thought it'd be really fun if we posted pictures of our sacred spaces into the Magic of the Month group, just to kind of show what they look like. And for some people who maybe don't have one and they just don't even know how to begin, we can give people kind of examples of what our spaces look like and inspire people, because I'm always inspired by what other people are doing as far as magic goes. It's so much fun to see how other people practice magic and how they make that kind of a connection. So if you can, and you're comfortable with it, post pictures of your process. Maybe you want to show us, like, I decided this would be the perfect space. Here's what it looked like before. Here's what it looks like after. Whatever it is that you want to do, and however you want to do that, it's totally up to you. But I would love to see pictures of your sacred spaces. So do it. I'm excited to see them. And I think they're really important. So that's your homework for this month. We will, next month, we'll be talking a little bit more about different aspects of like our sacred space and how to kind of grow it and build it and have different types of aspects of it that we can use for dedications. But in the meantime, if you don't have a sacred space, please, by all means, begin creating one, or thinking of places where you can create one, and then share them with us, because we want to see them. All right, so next up, we're going to start talking about retrogrades, because I'm sure that everybody not only am I sure that you all, first of all, I'm going to get my tea. So not only am I 100% sure that you all are experiencing these retrogrades, because I am. You can see my light ring right here, because the lighting in this spot makes me look like a gargoyle, so I have to blast my face with the light ring. So that's what that is right there. Maybe you can, there you go. You can see on my glasses. So, yes, everyone is probably experiencing these awful piece of shit retrogrades that are horrible and making everybody's life a living hell. And they're very frustrating, and they're very, very they're kind of like interfering in everyone's life right now. So let's talk about what a retrograde is first so that I don't spill tea everywhere. Okay. Again, I'm going to go to my notes. Retrogrades, retrograde motion. So retrograde motion is an apparent change in the movement of the planets through the sky. So that's pretty straightforward. It's an apparent change. It's not an actual change. It's an apparent change. You would observe it as a change, but it is not a physical change. So I think for a lot of people, they get confused because when they hear retrograde, they start specifically around Mercury retrograde, they think that it's so it's going backwards. Then Mercury's starting to go backwards. That's not what it is. It's actually perceived as if it's going backwards, but it's not actually going backwards. That's a very common misconception. So again, a retrograde motion is an apparent change in the movement of a planet through the sky. So it's not real in that the planet doesn't physically start moving backwards. It appears to be doing so. So I wrote this down because this is the best way to explain it to people. So from the vantage point of Earth, it appears to be spinning backwards, but it's not actually spinning backwards. But because of that, because it goes into retrograde, because it begins to change and we begin to perceive it differently, it has a different influence on the planet. So each retrograde cycle has a shadow period. A lot of people, I think, before and after any planet retrogrades start, they can feel it happening around the dates, either before and after, and it's usually a shadow period. It reflects basically what's going to be happening during that retrograde, and it's kind of like a buffer zone that most people will experience either before or afterwards, and it happens quite often. So each retrograde cycle has its own shadow. Essentially, it's the awkward adjustment of a retrograde planet from an apparent backwards to forward motion. So, and vice versa. For that reason, you might feel the stirring of a retrograde cycle a few days, and sometimes for some people, a few weeks even, especially if it's like a really, really gnarly retrograde before it officially begins. So currently, we have a butt ton of retrogrades happening, and I figured it might be kind of interesting to break some of them down for you so that you can understand. We're all really familiar with the Mercury retrograde. It affects our technology, kind of breaks down. Really, in a lot of ways, what happens is, in a lot of ways, it can affect our ability to communicate, which is probably the best way to describe it. It really will tear down our ability to communicate with people, which is why so often we get very annoyed and irritated with people, especially if they're people that we already don't have great communication abilities with. It can really tear that down. I'm just reading question. Do retrogrades affect everyone at the same time, or are they based on an individual astrological chart? So retrogrades are influenced. So think of it in terms of our planet. So when we were talking about a retrograde, Mercury retrograde is in conjunction with the planet Earth. So it's not necessarily in conjunction with any one of the astrological signs, although if it's a Mercury retrograde that's happening during whatever like astrological place we're in, that can sometimes cause it to be worse in some cases for that sign specifically. But think of it in conjunction to the planet that we're in right now. So from the vantage point of our planet, it appears as if Mercury is going backwards when it's not really. And then the retrograde affects pretty much everybody on the planet. Some people can get away without experiencing anything. Those people are freaks and I hate them, but I don't actually really hate them, but it's just pretty unfair because Mercury retrograde sucks. So that's a good question. Nice question. Our first question of the day. So retrogrades turn our attention to the past and can be, they sometimes refer to them as cosmic grace periods, which is a very nice way of saying no real forward momentum should be taken during a retrograde, mostly because there's so many breakdowns happening that in a lot of cases when we do kind of like sign contracts or be like, or decide, yeah, I'm totally going to go do this thing, it will inevitably kind of break down and fall apart. And it's part of the process. So usually what they say is during retrograde, specifically during Mercury retrogrades, chill out, take a breather. Crap's going to be happening all around you. Accept that it's going to be happening all around you. Accept that people are going to be grumpy jerks and stabby, and take a breath and try to figure out how to approach what's going on, which is easier said than done. I fully understand that. So when we can finish all the things that we've started and strengthen our plan. So basically what we want to do is we want to take time during the retrograde to think back at everything that we've done in the past and to look at any loose ends that need to be tightened up, or connections with people that need to be severed, or anything that needs to come to some kind of a completion. We need to begin to think about what that's going to be like and how we're going to go about doing that. So again, remember, retrogrades are a good time to turn inward, to turn our attention to our inner selves and our inner life. Think about our past and think of them again as a cosmic grace period. Instead of thinking of a retrograde in terms of being an absolute nightmare, think about it in terms of being a nice little breather space where you don't have to be rushing towards everything that you think you need to get done. Instead, you can take time to start thinking about how to make those things have more of a foundation, so that you're not rushing, so that you're not potentially doing something that's bad, and that inevitably could be bad for you. So when we can finish all the things that we've started, or strengthen our plans and ensure that we don't move forward on shaky foundation again. So we just want to have a good foundation, and that's what we can use that time in retrograde for. So if you've ever needed an excuse to say, I need more time, I'm giving you this excuse right now, especially if it's during a retrograde period. Take your time. Stabby, grumpy jerk checking in. Thank you for explaining. We're all there with you, Diana. I totally understand that. It's easy to, especially because I always feel like with retrogrades, something happens, and then like the law of attraction kicks in, and we're grumpy, and because something's happened, and then we draw more grumpy stuff to us, and then more grumpy stuff happens on top, and it just kind of like begins to spiral out of control. And that's why I always try to talk to people about retrogrades in terms of like thinking about them as a grace period rather than thinking about them as a scary nightmare, because there's so much content out there that there's a lot of kind of fear mongering around retrogrades, but really they do serve a purpose. It's kind of a sucky purpose, but it's sort of necessary to a degree. So people and issues from our past, this is again what will usually happen in a Mercury retro time period. So a lot of the stuff from our past will start to come to the surface. A lot of people from our past will come to the surface. A lot of trauma will come to the surface. So we'll start thinking about people that have hurt us. We'll start thinking about aspects of ourselves that we need to change. We'll be thinking about those things, and then sometimes, in some cases, those people will magically appear. So you'll get a message from someone who you maybe don't want to continue having a relationship, maybe a family member that you don't have a good relationship with. They'll start to try to get you to fight with them about something, or they'll pop back up into your life for some reason. And usually in those cases, it's because there's an aspect of that relationship that we have to heal, that we haven't healed from, and that there is trauma around. So again, people and issues from our past tend to resurface around there, giving us a chance to reconnect or revise. And really, when I say revise is a word I use a lot when it comes to retrogrades. And really that just means taking a breather and reapproaching the problem. And if the problem is a person or something or a habit that like you just need to cut out of your life, then that's what you have to do. And that's what that time period is for. It's so that you can sit with yourself for a period of time, make a decision, and then follow through that decision. But usually I would wait till after the retrograde is over before you're actually following through with it. But you can use the time during the retrograde to really think about what needs to be changed. So this could be useful time to resolve any arguments, revisit old ideas, research any ideas, or new commitment. So again, it's a grace period. It's time. It's your excuse to take as much time as you need to either decide whether you want to continue having a relationship with someone, whether you want to continue doing something or working at a job. It gives you time to really think about it, because it does really kind of pull us into an inner place where we are thinking about a lot of those things on a deeper level. It lets you tighten up your routines and plans during these periods. So again, it's your grace period. It's your time to chill. It's your time to think a lot about what's happening around you. And usually what happens is we want to be able to do those things, but we're so triggered by what's happening around us on the outside, whether it's our, TV breaking, or we get into like a fender bender, or our boss yells at us, or our kids are driving us crazy. It's those things that tend to try to pull us out of that space, instead what we have to do is start to cultivate a mindset where we're remembering that all of these very frustrating things are happening for a reason. And instead of just kind of getting frustrated with them and just being frustrated with them, we have to look at them in terms of, what do I need to fix here? Like, what about this isn't working anymore? We need to fix something here. So Mercury retrograde, some people may find themselves unable to effectively communicate. Totally understandable. A lot of us have a really difficult time communicating during Merc retro. And that can be communication in marriages, at work, in friendships, with our kids. Even just going to the grocery store, it can be difficult. It can be a difficult time for everyone to communicate. This Mercury retrograde it started July 7th, and it goes, I think, August 1st, I have written here. So we have a little bit longer to go until we get through it. And this one's really frustrating because, again, we have so many other planets that are in retrograde right now. The other ones, and I wrote them down so that I would remember all of them. So Jupiter is also in retrograde right now. It doesn't tend to cause as much harm as Mercury. It tends to be like a quiet time for reflection. So right now, it really is a very good time to really be reflecting a lot on our lives and what we want to change about them. And even reflection on what we have to be grateful for, and our gratitude, and what the things that we love are. Like, it's a nice time to be thinking about those things, because maybe when we're able to give ourselves time to think about the things that we love and what we're grateful for, it lets us realize, oh crap, I should probably be doing more of that. I should probably be bringing more of that into my life, instead of focusing on the other stuff that doesn't make me feel like very happy. So the nice thing about that Jupiter retrograde is it gives you time to really think about those things, and to kind of have time for peaceful, quiet reflection, which is very important, especially right now. So that's gone from April 10th to August 11th. So we've got a little bit more time again to be in that space. Saturn is also in reverse orbit. People may experience a sense of moving forward. So if you felt as if time's kind of been going a lot faster over the past little while, maybe aspects of relationships have like changed very dramatically, very fast. That's usually Saturn influence. And we've been going through that since late April into about the third week of September is when we'll continue going through that. Neptune is also retrograde. And it's been from last June, and it'll be till this November. And basically, it's a very big trigger for psychic awareness. So if you feel as if your aspects of your gifts have been wonky over the past little while, or maybe you've kind of shifted towards learning some things that are not necessarily what you would normally have been interested in, that can be influenced by that big time. So the one that we're coming up to is Uranus retrograde, and that's going to be, I think it starts in August and it goes to January, and that is a big one for self-reflection. So yeah, we've got that one to look forward to, which is kind of nice, because it kind of goes back to the Jupiter reflection, where we're talking about that period of like peaceful self-reflection and reflection of our lives. So we're going to be thinking about that a lot over the next couple of months. Oh, and Pluto also. Pluto's one of the creepiest retrogrades, actually. It goes from August to October, which is kind of also very creepy. But it's Pluto retrograde is all about the shadow self. So there's a lot of kind of aspects of our shadow selves that might be not necessarily coming up to the surface, but definitely changing and shifting. And so pay attention to that aspect of yourself. Like maybe we'll be learning new things about our shadow, and learning new ways to integrate our shadow all the way up to October, which is like the perfect time for it to go back and like for us to be able to take that information with us and move forward. So I realize a lot of that for people who don't really know anything about astrology and aren't really interested in astrology, it can sound like a lot, and astrology can be a lot. I'm by no means an expert in astrology. It's something that I've always been really passionate about and interested in. But retrogrades are always really fun things to talk about, basically because they do have such a huge influence on us, and they have such a huge impact on people. And I think even just having that basic knowledge about what a retrograde cycle is and how it can affect us, that always is helpful. So even knowing kind of like a basic, for magical people, knowing sort of a basic foundation of astrology is really important also, because we can utilize astrology for magic and for, our spell work. And that's in that case, I think that those are things that we definitely need to know a lot about. But retrogrades, since there's so much hype about retrogrades right now, people are just crazy talking about them, and there's a lot of fear kind of built around them, I figured I would break them down a little bit for you so that you could understand them and understand what a retrograde is. And now you don't have to be so afraid of them, because you know that, yeah, frustrating things are going to happen, but I'm going to try to approach all of those frustrating things from a somewhat positive perspective and see what I can learn from them. So take that information with you, go forth into the world of crazy retrogrades, and try to not be so overwhelmed by them. And every single time something happens, like here's a really good example. Here's a little story time example. We were flying somewhere a couple months ago when we were actually in retrograde, which is hilarious. On our way to the airport, once we pulled up to the airport, our Uber driver got rear-ended right in front of the airport. Like, just this woman just literally just blasted right into him as we were literally getting our bags out of the car. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know why I said sorry, because I'm Canadian probably. But I was like, this sucks. This is so bad. This is Mercury retrograde. What's happening right now? And like, he was like, and then like Greg and I couldn't really do anything. We sort of had to just go into the airport, and I felt really bad. And like, we had both just gotten back from another event, and we were really kind of tired, and we got through security and we got all the way up to our gate, and they literally canceled our flight. And they rebooked our flight for the next day. And for like the first 5 seconds, I was frustrated, because I was like, we did all this stuff and we got all the way here, and now we have to do this all over again. And then I realized, no, I want to go home and just sit in my pajamas for like 24 hours. I need that. And so it was like a weird way of like, I kind of had to shift my perspective a little bit and remind myself, like, this is for a reason. This happened for a reason. I feel bad for the guy getting rear-ended. That wasn't for a reason. Maybe it was for him. I don't know. Maybe there was a deeper meaning behind that. But definitely having our flight canceled was frustrating for 5 minutes. And then I realized I actually need to take like a little bit of a breather. So it happened for a reason. And I chose to kind of shift my perspective, and it changed the way that I felt about it. So I wasn't frustrated, and I was able to kind of be happy about it. So Christine's asking about the shadow self. I probably honestly could do an entire class on talking about the shadow self, and maybe I will, if that's something that you guys are interested in, because I'm sure that that's also another kind of buzz term that gets passed around a lot that everyone's probably heard about, but there isn't a whole lot of concrete information about what the shadow self is. And there's just a lot of it, and a lot of it is that's not necessarily, that there's a lot of competing kind of ideas about what it is. So briefly, the shadow self, or shadow work, is it's working with aspects of ourselves that we usually don't like to look at, and often has some trauma associated with it. So for some of us, it could be aspects of our childhood. It could be family issues. It could be body issues, but in most cases, it tends to be things that kind of exist on a much deeper level. So aspects, again, of ourselves, of our shadow self, of the parts of us that we are a bit taboo, that we wouldn't necessarily want to kind of show to the world. That's like a very basic kind of definite or explanation of shadow within the confines of magic. The shadow self exists far beyond that, and I like that question a lot. And actually, I think I will do at least a portion of a class on it because I think probably be pretty interesting. But just basically, when we think about it in terms of magic, we're thinking about or the spirit. We're thinking like the spiritual self. We're thinking about it in terms of aspects of ourselves that we have to face that maybe we're not necessarily comfortable facing, but once we face them and once we come to terms with our shadow self and with those aspects of our shadow self, we actually integrate them and we become more balanced, we become more healthy. Because in a lot of ways and in a lot of spaces, those aspects of our shadow are things that we don't feel culturally, but also just kind of within the human condition to not accept and not be comfortable with. And we might feel judged by them. We might feel persecuted by them. We might feel that people would hate us if they knew those aspects of ourselves. And maybe on some level, we kind of hate them ourselves. But really, that's what the working through that shadow process is, coming to terms with a lot of that stuff, integrating it and being good, allowing it to make us more healthy and to make us more balanced. Because we can't. I always tell people, I get a lot of people talk to me about like love and light. And there's nothing wrong with love and light and loving light new agey people. There's nothing wrong with that. But the reality of it is that's a very one-sided perspective on spiritual health. Because the reality of it is most of us have dark sides to ourselves. And calling them our darker side doesn't necessarily mean that they're evil. They're just darker aspects of our shadow self. And if we were comfortable enough with ourselves to integrate those aspects of the shadow, we then become whole instead of being one thing or the other. And so shadow work is really recognizing that, embracing those aspects of ourselves, working through the trauma around those things, help us to become more of a solid individual and a healthy individual. And then we're not segregating ourselves and kind of compartmentalizing who we are as people. And the shadow, working with the shadow, I mean, that's a lifelong thing. It changes constantly. So I will definitely do. Yes, Jennifer says she'd be really interested in shadow work. Okay, I will definitely put together something for maybe not the next class, but maybe the one after that. Because no, you know what? I'm gonna save it for October's class because it's kind of spooky, and it would be perfect with Samhain, which is what we're going to be talking about. Which leads me to our next section. We're probably going to go over an hour. I apologize. I always do this. I say an hour and then I end up talking and drinking tea. Okay. So I will definitely talk about the shadow self and how to integrate and work with a lot of that kind of stuff. I'm sort of stumbling over my words right now because I haven't really sat down and thought about it, but I will definitely put that into a class because I think that would be really interesting. Good call. So next we're going to talk about the Wheel of the Year. And this is something I'm super excited about because this is going to be our series for the next year, basically, of classes. We're going to be talking about the 8 Sabbats and how to practice them and what they are and where they came from and why should we practice them and what do they mean. And how did they all come to be? How did the Wheel of the Year come to be? So basically, the Wheel of the Year. Move my leg because it's literally falling asleep. Ugh. So the Wheel of the Year, and again, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes, but the Wheel of the Year is made up of 8 different Sabbats. They're known as the Lesser and the Greater Sabbats. So the Lesser Sabbats are Yule, Ostara, Litha, and Mabon. And the Greater Sabbats are Imbolc, Beltane, Lunasa or Lammas, and Samhain. So they take place throughout the year, which is why we call it the Wheel of the Year. And they're celebrations that happen during the equinoxes and at certain points during fire festivals. And they're celebrations of the seasons. And so the Wheel of the Year is in a lot of ways a Wiccan concept. And each one of the different Sabbats that are practiced are reflected sort of, they reflect a lot of different Celtic and Norse and Greek pantheons, and not only those pantheons, but also their cultural celebrations. There's the word I'm looking for, celebrations. And Germanic. And so a lot of those, the Sabbats are reflections directly from old celebrations that our ancestors would have been practicing at that time. And in a lot of ways, they reflect the seasons and what's happening in nature. And by practicing the Wheel of the Year, we make this really wonderful connection in nature and to what's happening in the world around us, the natural world around us, which I think is really, really fun. And it definitely creates a bond to seasonal, like the seasons and what's happening in the seasons. So I'll break them down really fast because it's going to be boring for you to hear me ramble on information about each one of them as fast as possible, because I think that we should probably focus intensely on whichever one is kind of coming up. But they're Yule, so the winter solstice, which can be practiced between December 20th and the 23rd. It's usually obviously around Christmas time. And next would be Imbolc, which is a really wonderful fire festival, and that is the promise of spring. And usually it's practiced on February 2nd. Next would be Ostara, which is the spring equinox. It happens around Easter. So there's lots of really beautiful imagery around Ostara. It's a gorgeous, beautiful Sabbath. Next would be Beltane, which is another one of my favorite fire festivals. It's May Day, so it's on May 1st. Litha, the summer solstice, which is June 19th to the 23rd. Lunasa, or Lammas, which is the one that's coming up, which is the one we're going to be talking about today, which usually is practiced on August 1st or 2nd. August 2nd is my birthday, so that's usually when I like to practice it. And then Mabon, which is the autumn equinox, which happens September 21st to the 24th. And then finally Samhain, which is the Witch's New Year. And that happens in October, usually on Halloween, so October 31st to November 1st. And it's a very spooky, beautiful Sabbath that deals with our loved ones that have passed on, and our ancestors, and creating connections with death and understanding how much cycles come into play when it comes to death. So those are the 8 Sabbats that we're going to be focused on for the next year. And we're going to be talking about what those Sabbats are, how to practice them, why we should practice them, what we can get out of our practice, and where they came from. So we're going to start with, I'm going to bend my paper here so I can do this. So what the Sabbath that's coming up is one of my favorites. It's Lunasa. It's spelled very strangely, and people always call it Lugnuksaga, but that's not actually how you pronounce it. It's Lunasa, or can also be called Lammas, which is another way that people will refer to it based on what kind of magical practice they practice. So the name Lunasa refers to the Celtic god Lu, he was a god of grain. And so that kind of gives us a inkling, obviously, that Lunasa tends to be, or that it would be associated with the Celts and the Celtic festivals. So the name Lunasa, again, refers to the Celtic god Lu, the god of grain, because again, this grain is a very important, grain and corn are very important visual connections to this Sabbath. And a lot of magic practitioners, witches, and pagans tend to decorate their magic spaces with corn, sometimes sunflowers. I like to bring in sunflowers because it's a representation of the sun. We'll get into that in just a minute. But corn and grain, because Lunasa is the very first of the 3 harvest festivals. It's the very first one. It happens in August when it's still warm. It's very warm. And we're just beginning to see the first signs of autumn kind of coming. And that is usually in our gardens, if we have vegetables or fruit, we're starting to see a lot of the vegetables and fruit really, for the most part, are kind of coming to an end, like that aspect of the garden at that point in time. A lot of seeds are falling from trees. We're starting to see, again, the first kind of whiffs and hints that autumn is eventually going to be coming. And that's the first time we're seeing that at this point in the summer season. So it's this very interesting moment for kind of transition, because once we're into the harvest festivals, we're in it. It's beautiful autumn and it's pumpkins and it's all that lovely stuff. But Lunasa is this really fantastic moment of deep, deep transition, not only for like Mama Nature, Mother Earth, Gaia, but also for us. And it can be a really wonderful time for us to create some huge, important transitions in our life. So Lunasa is the name of one of the 8 Sabbats in the Wheel of the Year. The Wheel of the Year, I like that I wrote this after I wrote that, but here we'll just talk about it again. The Wheel of the Year is a representation of the 8 pagan holidays or Wiccan Sabbats. They honor and celebrate the seasons and the cycles of life. The summer solstice is the height of summer, which is our previous Sabbat. And then Lunasa or Lammas is the start of autumn. So Lammas is the first of the 3 harvest festivals. The later autumn harvest festivals are Mabon, or the Ox, and Samhain, which is our Halloween, which is New Year. And so we're basically going to get hit with 3 in a row, and they're 3 very powerful Sabbats. They're 3 very powerful moments, not only for Mother Nature, but also for us. It's time to harvest. It's time to think about what we've achieved, like in the physical world, but also in the internal world. And when we're thinking about all the things that we've achieved this summer, we can then move into the autumn, not quite afraid that we're losing everything, because we can celebrate what we've achieved. And we know that we're harvesting those things. We're bringing those things into fruition. So the later festivals are Mabon and Samhain, and we will eventually get to them. Lammas or Lunasa takes place each year between August 1st and September 1st. It really just depends on how you like to practice. I like to practice it at the beginning of August, because for me, it's not only around my birthday, but it's also it is that time when like there's this kind of we haven't quite gotten to the late stages of August when we do start seeing the sun going down very fast, and sometimes the leaves start to change around then. We have this weird moment where we're a breath between the 2 aspects of the season, and they kind of coexist together. So it's a very important Sabbat for change. So if you're having a lot of changes happen in your life right now, or you want to have a lot of changes happening in your life, you want to have those transitions, that's what this ritual is all about. And practicing magic for you, if that's where you're at during this phase of the Wheel of the Year, it's very important. It's a really, really nice time to be practicing those types of magic. So at this turn in the Wheel of the Year, we celebrate not only the generous bounty of Mother Earth, which is happening all around us, as we can see in our gardens, and just if we're taking a lot of nature hikes and spending time outside, we know it. Nature's alive right now around us. But the fruit of our labor also, because the summer tends to be a time when we are very active, and we're doing a lot of things, and we're kind of very motivated to do things. We're seeing that, yeah, our motivation and our actions are actually bringing about a lot of cool stuff. So we honor our strength, our skill, and our vision, which allows us to produce a harvest, which is, again, what this Sabbat is all about. It's celebrating our ability to harvest anything, because some people, they may not have taken advantage of the summer, and they maybe, don't have anything to celebrate. But for a lot of us, even if it's just making the connection to our spiritual selves, that's something to be proud of, something to be excited about, and something to celebrate. And that's what this Sabbat's all about. It's celebrating what we have to harvest. Hence all of these beautiful fall scenes, because that's what we're coming into. So in the Wiccan tradition, for this Sabbat, the goddess takes the aspect of the harvest mother. So she's the grain mother, the harvest mother. You'll see her depicted as a goddess with grain growing out of her hands, or corn surrounding her. She encourages us to gather what we can, because we have to remember, we might be in this place of abundance right now. It's beautiful summer. We have all the time in the world to be outside. We can take that for granted. We have all the time in the world to enjoy the beautiful garden or to go for nature hikes. But we have to remember just because we have it now doesn't mean that we're going to have it in a couple months. So it's really time to take advantage of that, to appreciate that, and to spend as much time appreciating it as you can, because autumn and winter will be here soon enough and we won't have those things. So it's a matter of reflecting on how much we have to be happy for and how grateful we should be for what we have, and recognizing that gratitude is what's going to help us through winter and fall. So in the week, so the goddess takes on that mother grain, that harvest mother, beautiful imagery of her as this gorgeous, abundant goddess. She encourages us to gather. So the sun god at this point in time, in the Wiccan tradition, the sun god has reached his peak. We're at the peak of summer. It's the hottest it's going to be. We can feel it when we go outside. Our gardens are kind of in a lot of ways sometimes sort of taking the brunt of it because the heat can really not be great in a lot of ways. But the sun god has reached his peak. He begins to change from the green man to the sage. So whereas the goddess is going into the imagery of the grain mother, he's moving from the green man into the sage. So he's starting to age. He's reached his peak now, and he's moving past his peak and into the next phase. So this can be seen as the sun is now beginning to noticeably set a little bit earlier every single day. So it's not around quite as much as it was maybe in June and July. We're starting to notice that as we move through August, the sun is setting a little bit earlier every day, it's a little bit cooler at night when it does set. That is symbolic for, the god is symbolic for those things. So the god moving kind of from the peak of his youth into that sage period where he's not quite what he used to be, but he's now being able to take wisdom with him. So we give thanks to him for the abundance that he's given us throughout the summer. And in a lot of ways, a lot of people will give thanks to the sun, and they'll do that by, like, as I said earlier, using sunflowers, which is what I usually like to have on my altar. I'll have sunflowers because they are a literal physical representation of the sun. And so it's my way of kind of thanking the sun for all it does for the planet and all it does for us. And so that's a nice way that you can kind of celebrate a little bit. In our world, it's easy. So let's see. So in our world, it's easy to become disconnected and out of touch with the natural cycle of life. So think of Lunasa as a time to be thankful for the food on our tables, and take time to strengthen. It strengthens our link to nature. So even just the act of eating food that you've grown yourself, or buying food that's grown locally, that's a ritual in and of itself, because what you're doing is you're literally physically consuming the bounty that nature's given to us. So that's really what this ritual, or this Sabbath specifically, is very foodie. It's very food oriented. And so there's lots of like fresh veggies and fresh fruit and bread. I have a recipe coming up for you guys, for all you foodies who want to make magic and food at the same time. This is literally my favorite thing on the planet. And I'm so excited about seeing. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so I got really excited. Anyway, so eating fruit or vegetables from your garden is in and of itself a way to celebrate this Sabbath and this ritual, because that's what, it's literally physically a representation of all that nature has given to you. So if you do have gardens that have food in them, make that part of, make that the aspect of like literally consuming it almost ritualistic to a degree, where you're thanking, the earth for all that it's given to you. It's one of my favorite things to do. So decorate your sacred space. Again, we're going to be creating sacred space this month, but if you already have a sacred space, or if you're planning on doing one this month with the rest of us, and I'll be posting pictures of mine also. So don't feel like I'm definitely going to be posting way too many pictures and you're going to get sick of me. So decorate your sacred space by using rich colors. So this is the time of year for like yellows and golds and beautiful orange colors, and the colors of grain and corn, and all of these really, really like late summer, hazy summer colors. You can use candles that are those colors. You could decorate it with ribbons that are those colors. I love using ribbons for stuff like that. But you can also use dried corn. You can actually buy grain if you want. One of the things that I love doing, and maybe I will post a tutorial on how to do this, is to create corn dollies, which are very popular, especially right now for a lot of magic practitioners. They like to create them and decorate their altars with them, and they're really easy to make. It sounds like I ain't got time for that, but you definitely do. Don't worry about it. They're super easy to make, and you'll really enjoy them. And they're beautiful. They look gorgeous on an altar. So decorate your sacred space by using rich colors, harvest colors, so yellows, oranges, and reds. Red is a really important color because think of it like the way the sun sets in August. It's just red and gold and beautiful. So lots of reds. Decorate your altar with grain. If you can get some grain, yes, I will share recipes. If you can get your hands on some grain, get grain in there, just go crazy. It sounds so weird, but it looks so beautiful, and it just puts you right into like the perfect mindset for that kind of stuff. So fresh fruit, corn, grapes, jars of fresh flowers, seasonal herbs are really, really nice this time of year to have as a decoration. I have mine drying right here and right there. Make or buy fresh bread and leave it out for the birds. That's a really wonderful thing that I like doing. Make corn husks or corn dollies to decorate your home during the autumn season. I love doing all that kind of stuff. I'm such like a nature dork. Like I just love to, I love the aspect of creating with and playing with nature and being part of it. So those are all really fun things you can do. And if you have kids, these are super fun things to do with kids too. Like baking bread with them and kind of introducing them. And if you're not comfortable talking to them about magic or talking to them about witchcraft, that's okay. But introducing them to some of these fun seasonal things are really wonderful ways of kind of teaching them about nature and instilling in them a wonder when it comes to nature and our connection that we have with nature, because we really do have we are part of nature. So add things that represent your skill. So sounds really weird, but like maybe if you knit, or maybe if you're a photographer, or whatever it is that you're very proud of. This is a time of year, again, remember we're coming to the harvest season. So what can you harvest? What are the aspects of yourself that you're the most proud of, that you want to kind of put on display, that have come into fruition? So decorate your altar space with those types of things, like knitting needles or pieces of writing or photography or baked food or whatever it is that you love, that you have like honed and practiced and given your time and energy to. Use that as a way to decorate. So, oh yeah, okay. So some of the things that are really great is a lot of incense that can be burned to represent kind of this time of year again. Frankincense, sandalwood, and heather. They're really lovely to burn at this time of year. The herbs that are wonderful to work with, and you can burn some of these and work with them, is dill, yarrow, sunflower, obviously, rye, oats, corn, wheat. There's two others specifically that I will recommend, but I don't recommend burning or crushing, and that's hazelnut and acorns. And that's because unless they're cleaned properly, they are actually toxic and poisonous. But they really, if you just want to use them as decorations, that's totally fine. But I wouldn't, use them for any kind of tea or any kind of incense. I wouldn't crush them. I would just kind of have them hanging around. Again, because they are toxic and you can poison yourself. And I will always warn you about stuff like that. So, but they are wonderful representations of this time of year, and they do look really beautiful on an altar. So if you have access to some of them, like in your yard, definitely decorate with them, but make sure that, your animals or children don't find them. Especially with cats, because I know my cats are super chill, but most people's cats love to jump up on stuff and knock stuff over and chew on stuff. So, and then the woods that are associated with this time of year are grapevine, hazel, and oak. So oak leaves are really beautiful. If you have an oak tree, gather some of the leaves that maybe have fallen and create, art with them, or put them in your sacred space, whatever you want to do. But those are really, really wonderful representations of that. So there's two more things we're going to talk about. I'm a liar. 3 more things we're going to talk about, because I'm going to give you 2 recipes today. and one spell. So the first one, uh, and again, this is all archived, so don't worry if you don't have a pen next to you right now to write all this down. You can kind of rewatch this video for the. I'll post one of the recipes in the Magic of the Month group, and that way it'll be easier for you to kind of be able to follow them. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a simple harvest spell that you can do during this specific Sabbath. So if you don't really know how to practice the Sabbath, or you don't really know how to celebrate it, this is a very simple spell that you can do on Lunasa or Lammas. And that, again, it's going to be August 1st. It's very, very simple. It's a really wonderful way to kind of tap into the to the aspects of this specific time of year, and also do some sort of magic practice that kind of connects you to this specific ritual or in this specific Sabbath. So I just call it a simple harvest spell. So for this, you're going to need a cauldron or some kind of fireproof container, 2 orange candles, a piece of paper that you can write on, and if you have access to it, some sunflower petals. So either that or cornflower. You can use that. Anything that's orange, anything that's kind of bright and beautiful. But usually I would suggest, like, going to and picking up a couple sunflowers and kind of letting them decorate your altar. And then once they start to dry out, dry them for a day or two and pluck the petals off of them and save the petals for this specific ritual. So it's a pretty easy one to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our cauldron in the center, and we're going to have 2 orange candles, one to the left and one to the right. And so we're going to take a small piece of paper, and on our small piece of paper, we're going to write down all the things that we've harvested over the past year. So all of the things that we have achieved in this past year, the things that we have harvested that have come into full fruition. So maybe you bought a house, maybe you got a new job, maybe you published a book, maybe you gave birth, maybe you got married, maybe you graduated, whatever it is, something that you've achieved over this past year that you're really proud of. As many of the things that you've achieved, you're going to write them all down on a piece of paper. And so you've written them all down on a piece of paper, and you're going to light your first orange candle. So again, remember, we have our cauldron, we have our 2 candles. We're going to light our first orange candle. We're going to take our piece of paper and we're going to fold it, and we're going to light it on fire. And so we're going to light it on fire, and we're going to set it into our cauldron and let it burn. And basically what we're doing is we're acknowledging what we've harvested this year, and we're being proud of it. And now we can let it go. We can move forward, but we're taking a moment to appreciate what we've done. We're taking a moment to be proud of ourselves and to really be proud of what we've achieved. And so once that piece of paper burns, we're going to take our petals and we're going to sprinkle them on top of the ashes. And when we're ready, we're going to go outside and we're going to take our cauldron with our ashes and our petals, and we're going to put them into your garden or put them onto your grass, wherever some kind of a natural place where you can take them outside and put them. And essentially what we're doing is we're letting go of them. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to return back to our sacred space, and we're going to write down all the things that we really want to achieve. All the things that we want to kind of come to harvest this year. And we're going to take our second orange candle, and we're going to place it on top of our paper, and we're going to light it. And usually I like to use chime candles for this ritual just because they take about an hour to burn. So you're not having to sit there for hours and hours. And you're going to let your orange candle burn all the way down. So don't blow it out. Make sure that you have enough time for this ritual, because it probably will take you about an hour and 20 minutes to do. And let your orange candle burn all the way down. And while it's burning down, you can journal, you can meditate, whatever you want to do. And once it's burned all the way down, you're going to take all of it. So your candle and your paper that's basically been melted to the bottom of it, or you're going to put it into some kind of a bag, something that basically will keep it safe for the next year. Because what we're going to do is, again, when we come back to this ritual, when we come back to this Sabbath again a year later, as the cycle, the wheel turns, we're going to have this piece of paper. And so a year from now, we're going to break it free from the orange wax, and we're going to open it up and see what we've achieved, see all the things that we've achieved. And it's this really beautiful way of like looking back at what we wanted and seeing how much we've achieved, how how much when we really care and when we put our attention into it, we can achieve the things that we want to. So it's a very simple spell. Um, but it's one that I like doing every single year. And it's always fun kind of coming back to it a year later and realizing how many of those things that you've all actually been able to kind of achieve. It's great. So there's your simple harvest spell. If you don't know what to do for Lunasa or for Lammas, that's a wonderful spell that you can do. And again, it's very relatively simple. So here comes your recipe for all my food people out there. Because Lunasa and Lammas is a festival of food, it's really a festival of bread. And there's a lot of really great bread recipes, like for people who like to cook. Here's the thing. I'm not a great cook. I'm a vegetarian, which means I should probably learn how to cook because I kind of have to, but I'm terrible at it. So if I can do this, you can do this, is what I'm trying to say. So this is a very simple bread recipe that I literally have done. And so you definitely can do. Don't be afraid. And basically we're going to think of this as a ritual bread. We're going to think of this as bread that is made magically. So we're doing some kitchen witchery here. And so it's bread that we're going to make the day before Lammas. And then we can, on the day of the actual ritual, we can share it with our family. We can take some of it outside for the birds, but it's a traditional Lunasa bread recipe. So here it is. Again, if you don't have a pen, don't worry. This is the recipe I'm going to put in the group, so you won't have to actually try to remember how to do this yourself. So all you're going to need, just for a heads up, is a cup of flour, half a cup of cornmeal, quarter of a cup of sugar, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 2 eggs, 1 cup of milk, and 1/4 cup of shortening and or whatever the vegetarian option for that is. If you're a vegetarian, you don't have to do it that way, but that's how I like to do it. So basically, you're going to preheat your oven to 220. I love that I'm literally giving you a food recipe right now. It's making me so happy. Sift your flour, cornmeal, sugar, salt, and baking powder into a bowl. Blend in your eggs and your milk and your shortening. Beat the combined mixture. There's a lot of different chants that you can do while you're actually mixing, because again, the act of mixing is you're putting your energy into something. You're physically putting your energy into something while you're making it. So one of the ones that's very, very popular that I really like is the Earth Mother grants us the grain. The horned god goes dark to his domain. By giving life into her grain, the god dies, then is born again. So it's, again, that's a very simple one, but there's loads of different kinds of chants that you can do. And the act of actually chanting while you're mixing is putting your intention into that. So you really are legitimately creating ritual bread. So you pour the mixture into some kind of a mold. Some people like to use literally like a mold that's shaped like corn, or anything that is kind of representative of this time of year, into your pan. And you bake for 20 minutes to 35 minutes. And then when it's done, you have actual bread that you've made with ritual intention, and you can consume it during ritual. You can share it with your family, but it's a piece of it's a connection to nature. It's a connection to the seasons. And it's a really beautiful way to bring all of those aspects of the Lammas and Lunasa ritual together with what it's really about, which is grain and corn and the harvest. And that's the perfect way to do it. So that's a very simple Lunasa Lammas ritual bread that is one of my favorite things to do during this time of year. There's a lot of food that is associated with the Sabbath. So I'll probably, and feasting and eating, which is a really big, connection to a lot of them. So, prepare yourself for incoming recipes, because there will be lots of them. But there's so much fun when it comes to kitchen witchery and like cottage witchery, and I think a lot of us feel a deep kind of connection to that. And it's super fun to use recipes that our ancestors were using at one point in time, give or take a few of the ingredients, but our ancestors were making bread at this time of year. Most of our ancestors were making bread at this time of year, specifically because we were at the first of the harvest. So we're really connecting deeply to the many of the people that came before us, and a lot of the things that they were doing at this time of year to celebrate and to appreciate what nature was giving to them. So there's the very simple bread recipe for you. So the last thing that I will leave you with, it was, I can't remember who asked me for this, but someone asked me for my, they asked me for a recipe. I don't remember what it was for, but they asked me for a scent recipe, and I wrote it down, and now I can't remember it. So whoever you are, I apologize. I promised I would give you this recipe. So, and for everyone else who's wondering what I'm talking about, this is a really beautiful smelling recipe, but it's also really good for banishing negativity and kind of keeping your home clear of any kind of gross stuff. So basically what you're going to need is dragon's blood oil or resin. I specifically would recommend the oil for this because the resin can get a bit messy, and we're going to be using carrier oil, so something like a grapeseed oil or a coconut oil, something that's going to be our carrier. So because we don't just want to take these essential oils and use them, we want to have a carrier. So you're going to use dragon's blood resin, clove, which is another really wonderful one, but use a limited amount of the cloves because it can burn. If it comes into contact with your skin, it can be very irritating. And then sandalwood and fragrant amber. And I usually like to blend those together in some kind of a carrier oil, and I'll do it by smell, keeping the clove limited, obviously, because you don't want to have too much of it. And that oil you can burn in an incense burner or like an oil burner, or you can dress your candles with it, but it's really wonderful for protection. So I cannot remember for the life of me who asked for this recipe, but I apologize, but there's your recipe. So your Lunasal Lammas bread recipe, I will post in the Magic of the Month group so that everyone can make it and show me pictures of it and bake them into weird patterns and designs and whatever it is that you want to do. But it's so much fun, and it's such a fun way to celebrate this time of year. And if you have kids that you want to get involved in baking bread, and making bread from scratch is super fun, and it teaches them about this time of year. But also, if you have cat children like I do, it's also fun for adults and grown-ups, and it tastes really great. And again, it's like a super fun connection to nature, and it's very difficult to not feel nature, to feel very much a part of the natural cycle of the world when you're kind of connecting to those ancestral roots. So there you go. There's our class. So again, yeah, your homework is create a sacred space for yourself. Create some kind of a space that feels good to you and that makes you have a connection to not only your inner world, but it gives your inner world a space to exist in your physical, tangible reality. And post photos of them, and post photos of your process and how you're deciding to put stuff in your sacred space and what they look like. And then post pictures of your bread. If you make the bread, post pictures of it, because I want to see some pictures of it. I'm going to try to make a batch of it this month, and I'll show you guys what mine looks like when I do that. And I'm excited about the Sabin. I'm excited about Lammas. It's one of my favorites. So, and it's almost my birthday. So that's also awesome. So thank you for your patience within, the past couple of months. I know I would have liked to have been doing classes a lot more than that, but I'm carving out more space in my schedule so I have time to do the actual classes, because I freaking love doing them. And again, if you don't follow me on Instagram, follow me on Instagram. I'm weird _ and I'll be posting lots of video content. I'll be making some specific video content just for Magic of the Month people. And yeah, and I'll be seeing you guys back here again next month. I'm going to post the date for next month's class this coming week. So I'll post it in Magic of the Month, and probably even on Patreon, so that even some people who don't have Facebook will get the chance to see it. So yeah, we'll have the next class posted really soon. And I hope this one was really good. Let me know what you think about it. And yeah, if there's stuff that you want to learn more about, I loved the idea of talking about. Oh, I just saw a question. Yeah. So can the harvest spell be done a few days later than August 1st? Absolutely. You can do that spell any point from August 1st to September 1st. So don't feel rushed. And I always tell people, for a lot of the newbie Magic of the Month people too, the dates that I give in the instructions, because when you receive your Magic of the Month, I always include very detailed descriptions and instructions on how to do everything. All the dates that I recommend are really just around moon phases. So if you can't if you couldn't practice it on the full moon in this month, you can always do it the full moon next month. They're very kind of, I leave them open so that I give you suggestions, but they're, again, just suggestions. Take them and do whatever you can with them. But this specific harvest spell can absolutely be done later than August 1st. You can do it anytime throughout the month of August. So yeah, next month's class I'll have posted next week. And yeah, if you enjoyed the class, let me know. Let me know if there's stuff specifically that you want to learn about. Again, I love doing the idea of doing a class on the shadow self. That's so smart and fun, and I can really get into some weird stuff with it. So absolutely, that will be coming in the future. So, but yeah, anything that you guys are interested in as far as magic goes, I'm always open to suggestions. We are going to stick to studying the Wheel of the Year just because it's super important, I think, to practicing magic, in my own opinion. If it's actually at the same time, though, I'm open. And if you guys are like bored, I can totally scrap it and put something else in there too. I'm very open to whatever. You guys know what I mean. So, yeah, we'll see you next month. Thank you for hanging out with me, and let me know what kind of stuff you want to learn about. All right. Okay. Night, everybody. Oh my God. Yes.